everything I possibly can. I will leave no stone unturned and no song unsung. I'm not some big star. I'm just me. Neil Diamond's music touched millions, but his heart held secrets. His first wife, Jane Posner, knew him before the fame. They had 2 daughters. By 1969, their marriage was over. He blamed himself for everything. But recently, he revealed something shocking. It wasn't just about being a bad husband. He carried deep resentment that hidden anger poisoned their relationship. Now, decades later, he's finally admitting the truth about those bitter years. Neil Diamond was born on January 24, 1941, in Brooklyn's Coney Island. His parents, Rose and Kiev Diamond, were children of immigrants. His father's side came from Poland, and his mother's from Russia. His dad ran a dry goods store, and Neil grew up in a strong Jewish community. Life in Brooklyn wasn't easy, but it was full of energy, music, and people from everywhere. That mix of struggle and culture shaped who Neil became and stayed with him for life. Songs like Brooklyn Roads and America came from those early memories of being the son of immigrants trying to make it in New York. But just when Brooklyn was becoming home, the family had to move. World War II took Kiev to Cheyenne, Wyoming, with the Army. Neil was still a little boy. The quiet, open skies of the West were nothing like the crowded streets of Brooklyn. In Wyoming, he fell in love with cowboy movies, especially the ones with music. He would sit through matinees, wide-eyed, watching singing cowboys on the big screen. After the war, they returned to New York and settled in Brighton Beach. Going from wide-open spaces back to a packed city wasn't easy. That contrast between freedom and pressure became a part of Neil's emotional depth. You can feel both in the songs he would later write. At Erasmus Hall High School, Neil joined the freshman chorus and choral club. That's where he stood on the same risers as Barbra Streisand. They weren't close, just 2 poor kids trying to get by. He once said they used to hang out in front of school, smoking cigarettes. Another student there was Bobby Fischer, the chess prodigy. Neil didn't stay at Erasmus for long. After his family moved again, he transferred to Abraham Lincoln High School and joined the fencing team. His best friend Herb Cohen would later become an Olympic fencer. Years later, Neil and Barbara would sing a duet that became a massive hit, "You Don't Bring Me Flowers," proving just how far those poor Brooklyn kids had come. When Neil turned 16, he got a guitar for his birthday. It cost $9. That small gift changed everything. He immediately started lessons and writing songs. In fact, at 15, before even getting the guitar, he'd already written his first song, "Hear Them Bells." He wouldn't record it until much later, but it marked the beginning of something big. That $9 guitar led him to write over 38 top 10 hits and sell more than 130 million records. Even as he went to New York University on a fencing scholarship, planning to become a doctor, music kept pulling him back. That little guitar eventually led to his Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, all from a $9 gift. In 1957, Neil spent a summer at Surprise Lake Camp in upstate New York. There, he met Pete Seeger, the famous folk singer. Seeger had been blacklisted during the McCarthy era, but still came to camps to teach music. For Neil, it was a turning point. He saw campers play songs they had written for Seeger, and something clicked. He said later, "It all started with Pete Seeger. He was my original idol." As soon as he got home, he picked up the guitar again and began writing more seriously. It became his way to deal with frustration, with growing up, with life. That same year, he enrolled in New York University's pre-med program. He had led his high school fencing team to a city championship and earned a scholarship. At New York University, he trained under coach Hugo Castello, one of the best. Neil became the 3rd man on the Sabre team and helped win 2 national championships and 3 intercollegiate titles. In one stretch, he fenced through 2 matches without being touched, not once. But even then, his guitar was never far. He carried it on team trips and played in hotel rooms, always chasing that pull toward music. Neil never said much about why he chose medicine. Some believe it had to do with his family's expectations. It was the immigrant dream. He studied hard, got a stable job, become a doctor. He tried to live that dream. He worked hard, studied anatomy, memorized formulas. But at night, he wrote songs. In quiet moments, he filled notebooks with lyrics and chords. As he later joked, "This darn songwriting thing hadn't come up, I'd have been a doctor now." But the truth was, the songs never left him alone. Eventually, he couldn't ignore it. He began skipping classes to take the subway past NYU's stop, going straight to Tin Pan Alley, the center of the music publishing world. "It was just a few more stops," he said, "a temptation I couldn't resist." He would write songs during class and then try to sell them the same day. By his junior year, he was barely attending lectures. The melodies had taken over. In 1962, he got an offer that would change everything, $50 a week from Sunbeam Music Publishing for 16 weeks. It doesn't sound like much, but it was enough to make him drop out. He was only 10 credits short of a degree. Still, he walked away. Biographers say he might have stayed enrolled at NYU until 1965, but the truth is, he had chosen his path. It was music or nothing. But life at Sunbeam wasn't glamorous. He wrote songs for B-grade performers and was told how to write them. There was no space for real emotion. In 1962, Neil Diamond hit a low point. He had just been dropped by Columbia Records after 2 failed singles. His job at Sunbeam Music paid only $50 a week, and he hated it. So he quit. He took a wild chance and rented a tiny storage room above the famous Birdland Jazz Club on Broadway. It wasn't meant to be a home. It wasn't even meant to be a studio. But that's exactly what he turned it into. The space was so small, it barely fit a $30 upright piano. He also added a payphone. That was it. That was his world. But in that little room, something changed. He finally had privacy. No bosses, no deadlines, no pressure, just silence, and the sound of the jazz club below. He said, "I wasn't under the gun," and suddenly interesting songs began to happen. That's where he wrote Solitary Man and Cherry Cherry. He lived alone, almost completely cut off. But that isolation became his breakthrough. The truth is, he was starving. Between 1963 and 1966, Diamond sold maybe 1 song a week. His entire daily food budget was $0.35. That bought him a sandwich for $0.23, a Coke for $0.10, and a bit of candy for $0.02. That's all he could afford. He had studied at New York University on a fencing scholarship, just 10 credits short of graduating. But now he was flat broke, living above a jazz club and writing songs most publishers didn't want. Yet somehow, the less money he had, the more honest his songs became. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, he was just surviving. And that desperation turned into real art. But for 7 long years, no one wanted what he wrote. From 1962 to 1969, Diamond drifted from one publishing job to another. He wrote songs that were too emotional, too serious, too different. They said his music wasn't catchy enough. They wanted quick hooks. Diamond gave them stories instead. He was stuck. The worst blow came when Bang Records refused to release his song, Shiloh. They wanted something peppy like Kentucky Woman. He was crushed. He once said it took him 4 months just to write I Am. I said, that's how hard those years hit him. He kept pouring himself into songs, only to be told over and over again, not commercial enough. The real problem was deeper. Diamond wasn't built for hit formulas. While others chased radio-friendly hooks, he focused on lyrics, meaning emotion. He didn't even understand what a hook was supposed to be. At Sunbeam Music, he couldn't produce anything they wanted. At Lieber and Stahler's company, He only managed 5 or 6 songs in a year. None of them were hits. Meanwhile, other songwriters around him were pumping out pop smashes. He was out of sync with the whole system. But the thing that made him unmarketable at first, his honesty, was about to become the very thing that changed everything. Everything turned around in 1966. Neil Diamond approached Jeff Barry and Ellie Greenwich, one of the top songwriting and producing duos at the time. He had just been fired from another job. And instead of asking for a writing gig, he asked them to produce him. It was a bold move, but they said yes. Barry and Greenwich had already written 17 Billboard hits in 1964 alone. They helped Diamond get a deal with Bang Records, led by Burt Burns, and the results were explosive. Solitary Man came first. Then Cherry Cherry. Both were hits. Ellie Greenwich even sang backup. They started their own publishing company called Talleyrand Music. And then something wild happened. The Monkees recorded Diamond's song, I'm a Believer. It became the #1 song in America and stayed there for 7 weeks straight. After years of rejection, Neil Diamond was suddenly everywhere. On August 12, 1966, Bang Records released his debut album, The Feel of Neil Diamond. That album had his first big hits and helped define his sound. The cover was shot under the Brooklyn Bridge by his 17-year-old cousin. Solitary Man reached number 55. Cherry Cherry shot up to number 6. These songs weren't just catchy. They were real. You could feel the struggle in them. He had written some of them on the bus. Others came from long nights with his piano above Birdland. These weren't made in studios. They were born in silence, hunger, and grit. His early TV appearances in 1966 and 1967 sealed the deal. When he performed on American Bandstand, he connected with the teenage audience instantly. Dick Clark showed old footage that surprised even Diamond. He laughed at his long hair and watched as the crowd screamed. During one interview, Clark asked him about his hair, and Diamond replied humbly, I don't think I looked well in very long hair. But the truth was, people liked him just as he was. Raw, emotional, intense. But behind the scenes, Bang Records had a dark side. Diamond later hinted that organized crime helped launch the label. Some guys with broken noses were helping to get the records played, he said. Bang's logo even featured a .38 pistol. He told one story where bootleg versions of his records were being made in New Jersey. Burt Burns supposedly sent enforcers to shut it down by breaking legs. One of the men Diamond mentioned was Tommy Eberly from the Genovese crime family. When the Broadway musical A Beautiful Noise told this story, they used a character named Tommy O'Rourke as a nod to the real man behind the threats. Things got even worse when Diamond started pushing for more personal songs. Bang wanted hits like Cherry Cherry on repeat. Diamond wanted to grow. The fight over Shiloh was the final straw. Bang refused to release it. I didn't know how to rewrite Cherry Cherry, he later said. I needed to write something else. He wasn't trying to be difficult. He was just trying to be honest. That honesty clashed with Bang's business model. They didn't want deep. They wanted radio play, and that made staying impossible. When Diamond finally decided to leave Bang Records in 1967, the blowback was terrifying. Friends warned him that the FBI had picked up chatter. Someone in the mafia might come after him. He started carrying a loaded .38. He sent his wife and daughter away for their safety. His manager was attacked. A stink bomb shut down the manager's nightclub for 3 months. Even Barry and Greenwich got threats, but Diamond didn't back down. He walked away. In 1968, he signed with Uni Records. That move gave him the freedom he had always wanted. Neil Diamond was already a recognizable name in the 1960s, but in 1968, something changed. That year, he released a song called Brooklyn Roads, and it wasn't just another tune. It was a turning point. Up until then, Diamond had mostly written catchy pop songs that fit neatly into the charts. But Brooklyn Roads was personal. He said it was the most literal and personal story I had written up to that point. It talked about his childhood, his dreams, and where he came from. It wasn't just a song, it was a confession. And it marked the moment when Diamond stopped chasing radio hits and started telling stories that mattered to him. This new direction didn't come out of nowhere. He had just signed with MCA Records and wanted to explore something deeper, something more honest. Songs like "And the Grass Won't Pay No Mind" and "The Singer Sings His Song" followed him, showing he was no longer just a pop act. He was becoming an artist. Then in 1970, Diamond reached another milestone. On October 10th, "Cracklin' Rosie" became his first #1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100. It bumped Diana Ross off the top, though the Jackson 5 took the spot just 1 week later. The song had an unusual origin. While touring in Canada, Diamond heard about a community where there were more men than women. The single men would buy bottles of a cheap wine called Cracklin' Rosie and call it their girl for the weekend. That idea stuck with him, and from it came a joyful, slightly bittersweet song that caught the world's attention. He recorded it with some of the best session musicians in the business, including members of the legendary Wrecking Crew. Even though the lyrics confused some listeners, Diamond didn't care. The song was a smash and helped build momentum after earlier hits like "Sweet Caroline" and "Holly Holy." By this point, he wasn't just writing deeper songs. He was also conquering the charts. By 1972, Diamond was riding a wave of fame, but instead of just doing another tour, he made a bold move. He booked 20 nights at the Winter Garden Theater on Broadway. That kind of venue was usually reserved for old-school legends like Judy Garland, not pop stars. No one had done a solo concert run like that on Broadway since Al Jolson in the 1930s. Some thought it was too risky, but Diamond pulled it off. Every show sold out. Critics were impressed, even the New York Times, which admitted that although it seemed like a wild idea, Diamond had the talent and presence to make it work. He had already wowed audiences at the Greek Theater earlier that year, but this was different. It was more intimate, more theatrical. And when the run ended, Diamond took a break. He announced he was stepping away from performing to spend time with his family, especially his young son Jesse. The stage would stay empty for the next 4 years. Still, he wasn't done making history. On August 24, 1972, Diamond recorded a live album at the Greek Theater. That one night turned into Hot August Night, a double album that became a defining moment in his career. He didn't hold back. He brought in a cutting-edge quadraphonic sound system to surround the audience with music. The result was electric. Critics loved it. Fans couldn't get enough. The album hit #5 in the United States, but the real shock came in Australia. There, it stayed at #1 for 29 straight weeks and remained in the top 20 for 2 full years. That kind of success was unheard of. Years later, Diamond would release sequels to the album, Hot August Night 2 in 1987, Hot August Night NYC in 2009, and Hot August Night 3 in 2018, but the original? That one became legendary. Robert Hilburn of the Los Angeles Times called it an even bigger triumph than the Greek Theater shows from the previous summer. While all this was happening, Diamond tried something new. He agreed to write the score for a movie adaptation of Jonathan Livingston's Seagull, a popular novella at the time. But what should have been a creative high point quickly turned into a disaster. The film's director, Hall Bartlett, made changes to Diamond's music without his approval. Furious, Diamond sued. Even the book's author, Richard Bach, filed a lawsuit. The film was a mess. It barely made back its $1.5 million budget, earning just $1.6 million. Despite a unique approach, real seagulls on camera with dubbed voices, the movie flopped. But Diamond's soundtrack? That was another story. It sold over 10 million copies and won him a Grammy for Best Score Soundtrack Album and a Golden Globe for Best Original Score. The music outshined the film so much that Diamond added a 6-song suite from the soundtrack into his concerts, including his 1976 Love at the Greek Show. Years later, he even released a studio version in a box set. For Diamond, the film may have been a failure, but the music told a different story. In the middle of all this chaos, Diamond made a power move. In March 1973, he left Uni Records and signed a deal with Columbia Records worth $5 million. The biggest contract in music history at the time. It gave him $1 million for each of 5 albums. In today's money, that's about $7.1 million per album. Columbia was betting big, and Diamond delivered. He had already earned 8 gold records. Now, with this new deal, he had full creative control. That freedom allowed him to go deeper into his songwriting and take more risks with his sound. The contract didn't just change his career. It changed the entire industry. It proved that artists with a track record could demand and get huge money and total freedom. Diamond had set a new standard. Ironically, even as his music soared, Hollywood continued to test him. While Jonathan Livingston's Seagull was panned, the soundtrack became a cultural force. It stayed on the charts for nearly a year and earned critical praise around the world. Songs like Bee, Skybird, and Lonely Looking Sky became staples in his live shows. For all the legal fights and behind-the-scenes drama, the music stood strong. Critics who hated the film had no choice but to respect the soundtrack's power. Even Diamond's harshest moments seemed to result in musical gold. By 1976, he was ready to shift again. That year, he released Beautiful Noise, a collaboration with Robbie Robertson from the band. The two had met at Woodstock, but didn't seriously work together until they reconnected in California. For 6 months, they crafted an album that blended Diamond's storytelling with Robertson's earthy, layered sound. Garth Hudson, also from the band, added his signature organ. The singles did well. If You Know What I Mean reached number 11 in the United States and topped the easy listening chart. Don't Think. Feel hit number 43. The title track became a hit in Europe, reaching number 13 in the UK, number 6 in West Germany, and number 3 in the Netherlands. Diamond even performed Dry Your Eyes with the band at their farewell concert, The Last Waltz, which was filmed by Martin Scorsese. The album went platinum, showing that Diamond could still evolve and win. Still, the sting from Jonathan Livingston's Seagull didn't go away. Diamond made it clear he would never work on another film unless he had full control. The lawsuit had left scars, and he didn't want to repeat that experience. But by 1980, he went back on that promise. He starred in a remake of The Jazz Singer, believing he'd have more control this time. He was wrong. The film was a critical disaster. Diamond won a Razzie for Worst Actor. Laurence Olivier, his co-star, won for Worst Supporting Actor. One scene in which Diamond's character performs in blackface sparked outrage and ended in a riot on screen. And yet, the music told a different story again. Songs like America, Hello Again, and Love on the Rocks became classics. The movie may have failed, but the soundtrack endured just like Diamond always did. When Neil Diamond walked onto the set of The Jazz Singer, he wasn't just stepping into a film. He was stepping into a world ruled by Sir Laurence Olivier. Olivier, a theater legend with decades of acting brilliance, had been paid $1 million for 10 weeks of work. His voice, his posture, even just his presence, it all towered over Diamond. The singer, new to acting, later admitted he felt like a fish out of water. That wasn't just a metaphor. You could see it in every scene. Diamond looked lost. He barely made eye contact. Critics noticed. So did the crew. One moment captured that tension perfectly. Diamond was supposed to deliver an emotional outburst, but he couldn't get there. He froze, so he left the set and went into the recording booth. His band was waiting. He told them to play something that would make him furious. They chose a Barry Manilow song. That did the trick. He exploded with anger. Director Richard Fleischer saw the moment and called action. What ended up on screen wasn't acting. It was real frustration captured by accident. But the unease went deeper. Janet Maslin of the New York Times said Diamond looked glum and barely engaged. Olivier, meanwhile, was accused of phoning in his role with another tired accent. The two never clicked. The tension between them didn't just stay off camera. It bled into every shot. After the film, Diamond didn't pretend. He said it straight. "I'd rather be a really good singer than a mediocre actor." That film broke something inside him. The director had to coax usable scenes out of him like pulling teeth. The experience left a scar that lasted decades. He did come back to film once, 20 years later, for a cameo in Saving Silverman. But even then he joked, "If I ever do a movie again, it'll be a singing serial killer." The pain was still there. Even though the film's soundtrack became a hit and earned him a Golden Globe nod, he also became the first ever recipient of the Razzie Award for Worst Actor. Offers came in after that, but Diamond never tried again. He knew where he belonged, and it wasn't in front of a movie camera. Long before fame, Diamond had another life. At 17, fresh out of high school, he met Jane Posner. She was with him before the hit songs, before the spotlight. They married in 1963 and had 2 daughters, Marjorie and Elin. At first, it seemed solid, but by 1967, just as Diamond's career was taking off, the marriage was falling apart. They separated that year and divorced in 1969. Diamond later admitted he wasn't a good husband or father back then. Rumors of cheating followed him, but Jane never spoke publicly. She kept her silence, dignified, quiet. That same year, Diamond married Marcia Murphy, a production assistant. The timing was fast, too fast for some, but it marked a turning point. Songs like Sweet Caroline and Holly Holy exploded, and Marcia was right beside him. They had 2 sons, Jesse and Micah, and formed a blended family. Their marriage lasted 25 years. In Hollywood, that's a lifetime. But when it ended in 1994, it did so with a bang. Diamond reportedly paid her $150 million in the divorce, one of the largest settlements ever. Still, he didn't complain. "She stood by me," he said. "She deserves every penny." In 1976, during the height of his fame, Diamond released a song that made fans pause. If You Know What I Mean wasn't like his other hits. It was cryptic, moody, emotional. He said it was about a teenage romance with an older woman, but others suspected deeper meaning. Critics thought it hinted at marital tension, maybe even regrets. Lines like, "We gave it away for the sake of a dream," felt personal. Too personal. It didn't sound like the confident Diamond of Cracklin' Rosie. It sounded like someone wrestling with the cost of fame. By 2012, he was ready to say what he couldn't before. In a raw interview, he blamed himself for his failed marriages. "Both were spectacular women," he said. "Maybe I wasn't capable of it." He confessed to being high maintenance in relationships. When he needed something, he needed it now. He expected his partner to stop everything for him. He admitted it. And at 71, entering a 3rd marriage, he said, "I don't want to end this journey alone." That journey brought him to Katie McNeil. They met in 2007. She was 37. He was 68. At first, it was just business. She worked for his manager, but things changed, slowly. She produced his 2009 concert documentary and got closer. By 2011, they were engaged. He announced it on Twitter in verse, "Katie and I just got engaged, and I hope you wish us well." They married in 2012. After the ceremony, she drove them home herself in her wedding dress in a tiny sports car. The dress barely fit. In 1994, Tarantino called. He wanted to use "Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon" in Pulp Fiction. Diamond said no. The scene involved drugs, and Diamond had made a rule. No songs of his would be used in scenes involving drugs or smoking. But eventually, he gave permission for a cover version. It was the right move. The song didn't just boost the film's mood. It boosted Diamond's back catalog. Sales jumped. Tarantino, who found the track randomly in a record store in Holland, called it a really cool track that just stuck with me. Still, not all of Diamond's lyrics aged well. His 1971 hit, "I Am," I said became a joke for one line. "Not even the chair." Dave Barry mocked it. Is Neil surprised the chair didn't hear him? Fans were furious. Barry later joked, "Neil Diamond is God." Another target was "Play Me." The line "Song She Brang to Me" drove grammar fans wild. Diamond had used "brought" correctly in other songs, so this wasn't a mistake. It was a choice, and not a popular one. Listeners even rewrote the lyrics themselves to fix it. In 2018, everything changed. Just days before his 77th birthday, Diamond announced he had Parkinson's disease. He canceled the Australia and New Zealand leg of his 50th anniversary tour. The disease made touring too difficult, but he told fans he wasn't done creating. "This ride has been so good, so good, so good. Thanks to you," he said. A few days later, he received a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Grammys. 6 months later, in July 2018, a fire came close to his home in Colorado. The Lake Christine fire was massive. Over 12,500 acres burned. Diamond showed up at a local meeting and surprised 200 exhausted firefighters. He picked up a guitar and played "Sweet Caroline." His wife, Katie, introduced him. He told the crowd, "I want to make dinner for you, kiss you, thank you. The heaviness on our hearts is gone now." Then in March 2020, just before the world shut down for COVID, Diamond made another surprise appearance. At 79, battling Parkinson's, he walked onto the stage at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. It was a charity event for brain health. He was wearing sequins. He looked alive. He performed "Hello Again," "Forever in Blue Jeans I Am." I said, and of course, "Sweet Caroline." Jimmy Kimmel said it best. No Jewish man looks better in sequins than Neil Diamond. That night, March 7, 2020, became Neil Diamond Day in Las Vegas, a fitting title for a man whose voice defined generations and who, even in silence, never stopped singing.